Married to Medicine. The season finale is where everything either comes together or completely falls apart. And in this case, what we witnessed wasn't resolution, it was exposure. Because what should have been a moment of accountability, healing, and closure instead revealed something much deeper, something uncomfortable, something unresolved, and something very real about the dynamics within this group. Let's start with the moment that has everybody talking. Curtis's apology. Now, on the surface, it looked like what we've seen so many times before on this show. A man stepping forward, acknowledging wrongdoing, extending an olive branch. A gesture meant to calm tensions and restore some level of unity within the group. But the problem here is not what was said. It's what wasn't felt. Because when you strip away the words, when you look past the physical gestures, when you really analyze the tone, the body language, and the immediate reactions that followed, what you're left with is an apology that felt performative rather than sincere. And that distinction matters a lot. Because in reality TV, especially in a group that has years of history, unresolved conflict, and deeply personal relationships, people can tell the difference between an apology that comes from the heart and one that comes from obligation. And Curtis's apology, it leaned heavily toward obligation. Yes, he said the words. Yes, he made the approach. Yes, he even wrapped his arms around them in what appeared to be a unifying moment. But even in that embrace, there was something off. It didn't feel grounded. It didn't feel genuine. It felt like a performance, like a moment crafted to check a box rather than repair a relationship. And the audience saw it. The cast saw it. And most importantly, the people receiving that apology felt it. Because here's the reality. When someone truly understands the impact of their actions, their apology doesn't come with defensiveness. It doesn't come with conditions. And it definitely doesn't unravel the moment it's challenged. But that's exactly what happened. The moment King responded in a way that didn't fully validate Curtis's attempt at redemption, the energy shifted immediately. Suddenly, the calm demeanor disappeared. The patience wore thin, and what we saw instead was irritation, defensiveness, and a subtle but undeniable return to the very behavior that made the apology necessary in the first place. That is the tell. That is the moment where sincerity gets exposed. Because a genuine apology doesn't crumble under discomfort. It doesn't require immediate acceptance to remain valid. And it certainly doesn't turn into frustration the second it's not received exactly the way it was intended. So what does that say? It says the apology wasn't about accountability, it was about optics. And in a group like this where perception is everything, that distinction is critical. Now let's talk about another key element in this situation. Dr. Jackie. Because her presence in that moment was not passive. It was active. Very active. She stepped in. She corrected the language. She made it clear. We don't say if I offended, because we did offend. And that statement alone carries weight, because it highlights something important. Curtis wasn't naturally arriving at accountability on his own. He was being guided there, prompted, adjusted in real time. And while there's value in having someone help steer a conversation toward accountability, it also raises a question. Would that apology have happened at all without that intervention? Because based on everything we saw, probably not. And that's where the issue deepens. Because when an apology has to be coached, corrected, and essentially managed, it loses authenticity. It becomes structured, controlled, less about emotion, and more about execution. And that's exactly how this felt. Like a scripted moment in an otherwise unscripted environment. Now let's shift to the dynamic involving Eugene, Steve, and the broader tension that carried into this finale. Because while Curtis's apology was one focal point, it wasn't the only one. There was also an underlying energy building between the men, particularly Eugene, that couldn't be ignored. Eugene has always been someone who speaks directly, sometimes emotionally, sometimes reactively, but always from a place that feels real. And in this situation, that authenticity stood in stark contrast to what we were seeing from others. Because while some were trying to manage perception, Eugene was reacting to reality. And that difference created friction. Serious friction. Because when one person is being real, and another is being performative, those two energies do not align. And that's exactly what we saw unfold. Subtle tensions, short responses, moments where conversations felt like they were teetering on the edge of escalation. And while it may not have exploded into a full-blown confrontation in that exact moment, the tension was there. Thick, noticeable, unavoidable. Now let's talk about the setting of all of this. Toya's Med Gala. Because this event was supposed to be the backdrop for elegance, celebration, and impact. And in some ways, it was. The intention was there. The cause was meaningful. The guests were deserving. But when it comes to execution, that's where things started to fall short. And noticeably so. Because Toya is not new to hosting. She's known for going all out. We've seen her create elaborate, visually stunning events that reflect luxury, attention to detail, and a clear sense of vision. So when this gala felt underwhelming, it stood out. The decor lacked depth. The room felt sparse. The organization seemed rushed. Even the staging, from how people were positioned to how moments were executed, didn't flow the way you would expect from someone with her track record. And yes, there was a time constraint. 1 week is not a lot of time to pull together something at that level. But here's the thing. This isn't just anyone. This is Toya. And expectations for her are different because of what she's already proven she can do. So when those expectations aren't met, it becomes part of the conversation. And that's exactly what happened. Because while the event wasn't bad, it wasn't memorable either. And for a season finale, lot. Now let's bring everything together. Because what this finale really showed us wasn't just individual moments. It revealed patterns. Patterns in behavior, patterns in communication, and most importantly, patterns in accountability. Curtis showed us what a surface-level apology looks like. Dr. Curtis. Jackie showed us what it looks like to step in and try to guide accountability. Eugene showed us what unfiltered reaction looks like when authenticity meets frustration. And Toya's event showed us how even the strongest hosts can miss the mark under pressure. But the bigger takeaway? This group is still unresolved. Deeply unresolved. Because real resolution doesn't come from gestures. It doesn't come from staged moments. And it definitely doesn't come from apologies that aren't backed by genuine understanding. It comes from discomfort, from honest conversations, from sitting in the tension long enough to actually work through it, not just around it. And based on what we saw in this finale, they're not there yet. Not even close. And that's what makes this so compelling. Because while the season may have ended, the issues haven't. The dynamics haven't. And the underlying tensions, they're still very much alive. Which means when this group comes back together, nothing is truly resolved. It's just waiting. Waiting to resurface. Waiting to escalate. Waiting for the next moment where everything that was pushed aside comes right back to the surface. And when it does, it's going to be even more intense than what we just saw. Because unfinished business always is.